Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we take a look at people's opinion on such issues. I am R.Osime.
And I am Majekodunmi-Oniru. Today's topic is reputation versus money. How important is a good name in today's money-controlled societies? We have special guests and a very exciting show planned, so stay tuned while we get started.
Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. Your name represents you, your life, who you are, and what you stand for. A good name is more valuable than riches. It can't be bought with money. It is built upon the foundation of honesty, transparency, and ethical behavior. In a world that often celebrates rapid success and short-term gains, the timeless value of a good name stands as a beacon of principle and integrity. Integrity is something that takes a long time, in some cases a lifetime, to build. The impact of integrity extends beyond personal success and business achievements. It influences the very fabric of society. History has consistently shown that the pursuit of integrity and a solid reputation yields far greater rewards on the long run. In the journey of life, challenges and obstacles are inevitable. Those who have prioritized a good name find themselves better equipped to navigate through these rough waters. In a world where trends come and go and fortunes rise and fall, the timeless value of a good name remains steadfast. It's a testament to character, a beacon of trust, and a legacy that endures the test of time.
Thank you, co-host. Very well spoken. Many successful people always want to preach that a good reputation is better than money. But the truth is, many of them are harboring deep, dark secrets of illicit wealth, money laundering, and reputation laundering. They have branded into philanthropists and kleptocratic, yet very powerful politicians and captains of industries. Our world today is controlled by money, especially for those living in smart and connected cities. Money has become one of the most important factors. After all, food, fun, education, transportation, and practically everything progressive or luxurious requires money. So much so that people are willing to kill, steal, and destroy for monetary affluence and freedom. Today's debate is a close call, as a great percentage of people will choose money over values. But the truth is, the best life achieved by many people is one that boasts of financial freedom and a good name. A human with a good name can live his best life till eternity, and no human can bring him down no matter how hard they try. A human with a good name would stand tall, live tall, and achieve tall dreams without the fear of ever crumbling. A good name reeks of power, intelligence, competence, ethics, and humanity. A good name not only gives you a good life and good relationships, but good health and goodwill. There's the argument that in corrupt societies, a bad name thrives better than a good name. Well, we know the stories of Hitler and Pablo Escobar. We also know the stories of Martin Luther King and Obafemi Awolowo. The legacies of man-made money can be destroyed overnight, but the legacies of a good name vibrate indefinitely across multiple generations. We would announce our special guest soon, but right now, let's proceed to watch this unique report on a good name.
The culture of a people is in their identity, as it affords them due recognition. In Africa, people and culture are inseparable, since there is no denial of the fact that what makes any human society is its culture. However, lately, there has been a massive devaluation of ethics of African culture, which some people have attributed to the decline in morals, and that society has played a role in the dilution and eradication of principles and standards. For a society to be societal, it must be cultural. Therefore, society and culture are also intertwined. Someone's cultural awareness is the understanding of the differences between themselves and people from other countries or other backgrounds, especially differences in attitudes and values. These days, people will do anything to the satisfaction of selfish desires foregoing basic principles or values of life. They say the value of a good name is more than money. But a lot of people will do anything to get ahead in life, even if it's against the rules and morals of society. In today's world, at a glance of the environment we find ourselves, there is a scarcity of good role models to look up to. The development of individual identities is influenced by societal forces. Therefore, you cannot understand yourself or others without understanding how society constructs or defines characteristics such as gender, sexuality, race, religion, social class, and nationality. Today on Perspectives, we will be discussing the role society plays in the evaluation of ethics.
Well, what I miss most about the days of yore is how having a good name was paramount to most families. I mean, there will be instances where even if you were not earning much or you came from a relatively average family, you were expected to be satisfied with what you were given. You were not meant to lust after things that you cannot afford. Parents didn't encourage you bringing things into the house that they didn't buy for you. They will ask you questions. But in today's times, you have mothers and fathers, out of desperation or hunger or what have you, encourage their daughters to go out and bring money in, whichever way they can. So the erosion of values, ethics, morals that has been totally taken out of our system is really disheartening to see and disheartening to hear.
I guess it's the fight for money that has caused all of that. The increased poverty rate across a country like Nigeria or across the continent of Africa is causing a lot of desperation, and people are willing to do any and everything it takes to actually make that money and try to live a good life. But it doesn't subtract from the fact that a good name is powerful, extremely powerful.
Yeah.
When you look at the likes of Martin Luther King, if you see his grandchildren and great-grandchildren today, you will still respect them.
Likewise,
you will still
Mandela.
celebrate them. You give them that audience exactly like Mandela
Likewise,
too.
Mandela.
But that bad name, it usually ends with that person. Do we know any of Hitler's grandchildren? We don't know. Or Pablo Escobar's? We don't know. But a good name outlives us all.
Sometimes a good name, yes, a good name might be able to outlive us all, but the same name that has taken so many years and decades to build can be destroyed in just a minute.
Absolutely.
So it also depends on the individual who is carrying that name, because you've heard of people who are billionaires, millionaires, and their children become drug addicts, or they fall by the wayside, or they do criminal activities. So a good name is not necessarily just carried on automatically. It's imbibed into the next generation and the generation and the generation after. So at the end of the day, a good name is only as important as the person that has it at that point in time, you know. And unfortunately, there's some good names that one used to hear of the yesteryears, and their children today have thrown it out of the window. They've become almost like glorified beggars, looking for the quick deal or get rich quick syndrome. And which is why I want our guests to come into this. This approach of money is everything. You know, I don't know how we can change that. I don't know how we can change the emotional and the moral ethos of us as a collective people. So anyway, we're heading for a short break, but stay with us because we'll be back to introduce our wonderful guests. Demola Akinrele, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and Eyamba Dafinone, a businesswoman and property developer. Perspectives will return in just a moment.
It's time to introduce our special guests. First is Demola Akinrele. He is a Senior Advocate of Nigeria who traverses all aspects of commercial law and represents a variety of national and multinational entities before Nigerian courts and international tribunals. Welcome back to Perspectives today. Demola Akinrele, glad to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Also joining us is Eyamba Dafinone, a member of Council of Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, also a member of Vision 2020. She's also the Managing Director of Afrique Products and a property developer. She's an avid art collector, presently involved in a cultural revival and heritage project of the Black race, whose purpose it is to ensure that the dignity and sense of who we are is seen through the works of our forefathers. Eyamba advises aspiring women to take risks as the only way to succeed and challenge Nigerians' political leaders. It's so beautiful to have you here today with us, Eyamba. Can you hear us, Eyamba?
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Eyamba, let's start with you. Some say a good name that makes you remembered and not how much is what makes you remembered and not how much money you had or have. And a good name against money cascades from good leadership. In other words, if we had good leaders who emphasize on our morals and our integrity and our principles, that it will cascade down where the relevance of a good name still stands. But that is not the case in today's times. And why do you think that is?
Thank you for having me again. A good name. What is a good name? A good name is basically a reputation, and it's earned on reputation. And if you look at the word reputation, it's from a Latin word reputationem, which means consideration and what you think about. So basically, it's how do you consider the person you're looking at in terms of determining if the person is a good name. So who is looking and who is assessing? So if we look at it and say, the standards of what the people are looking for in that person. Is it a politician? Is it a businessman? Is it a singer? Is it an actress? So what are you aspiring and assessing that person to be? So if you then look at it and say, this good name, I feel that they have wealth, or I feel that they have achieved things in the past in terms of justice, fairness, they have left a legacy. Okay, that is how you would then assess a good name. Now, when we look at good names, I would assume in this case we're looking at those who have left legacies as against those who have made money, because we don't even know how they made their money. We can't assess how the wealth was earned. If we now look at and assume that a good name is those who have left legacies, they've written things that people can look at and emulate. We look at our historical figures of the past, Nkrumah, Tafawa Balewa, and all of them. If we look at it and say, okay, these good names existed, but what has happened? How come nothing has happened? You would look at it and then decide that in the politics of today, there is polarization, okay? If you look at, give an example, in America, Dick Cheney's daughter came and she couldn't win an election with Trump there. When you have polarization and you have parties that are controlled by the party system and they dictate, then your good name is irrelevant.
Absolutely.
In this term, you have to be prepared to do hard work. Hard work is
Thank
what will get you
you.
there.
Thank you, Eyamba, Dafinone. One more before we bring it into the studio. Can money buy a good reputation?
As I said again, reputation is from the word consideration. What are you looking at? I mean, some people would look at all our lovely young singers and say, they have a good reputation. That's what they want to be, okay? But it wasn't money that got them there. It was hard work. Some of these, you have Mobad. I mean, it was hard work that got them there. So I would not say that money will buy you a good reputation if you don't have the ethics to go with it, if you don't have the values to go with it, if you don't instill and practice these things, and you don't have that upbringing that instills these things in you. Because at the end of the day, it is your environment and how you were brought up that lets you become who you are, just, fair human being.
Okay.
That looks, because a good name also looks at values of, I mean, how you consider other people, your consideration and how you relate to other people. Okay.
Demola, let's get back to you. Now, one can say a good name is not necessarily just from the family or the pedigree that you come from. It's not just a matter of ancestry. It's also individualistic, because we've heard of instances of where people have left legacies behind, but there are some names now that we used to hear in those days that we don't hear anymore. So do you think this is also, apart from the fact that the person has left a legacy behind, it's also the continuation of that legacy depends on the individual? Do you think to a certain extent maintaining a good name is individualistic?
Well, a family reputation is always very important because it creates a presumption of trust. And you find that in many cases, there's often a continuation of that family reputation. But at the end of the day, a good name or a reputation is very individual to you.
Yeah.
Because individuals are people who, the sum total of their personalities, and all those things are trust, hard work, intelligence, resilience, they all come to bear. You can have a family where you raise all your kids well, and maybe only one child or only two children are able to carry that reputation better than the others. So it's very individual at the end of the day, but it's a function that is universal all over the world. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or you're poor. If the individual has those elements of character, then they essentially, wherever they go, people tend to recognize them and they open doors for them in terms of at least giving them a better chance than those who do not have good names.
But do you think that this good name thing too also can be destroyed in a minute?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can build, it takes years to build a reputation. You can destroy a reputation in one day. You see, but again, you are given a presumption of trust. Even with it, once a name is good, there's an area of reserve given when there's a crisis to understand what happened. You won't condemn immediately. I think when it becomes clear, of course, that the person has acted in a deliberate and terrible way, then the condemnation comes. But it still gives you the chance and an opportunity of testing what really happened here because of that presumption of trust that you carry.
Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. Do you believe that phrase still holds true today? So if someone is friends with a fraudster, for instance, would you see that person as a fraudster too?
Not necessarily. I mean, Jesus Christ hung with a few unsavory characters. The whole basis of Christianity or even confidence of an individual is that you can sometimes have friends who you don't do the things they do. In fact, you even try to influence them, but you find some parts of their humanity that you like, but it doesn't indict you. I mean, I have friends that some people may consider controversial, but that has no bearing on my own morals. I try to be positive with them, because if all you do is associate with people who are your own, then you're being too self-righteous and being too parochial. So I don't think friends condemn you. I think you can be who you are. As long as you know who you are, it makes no difference. And the question is, what are you doing to those friends that can help and make an impact?
Okay, now that you're speaking of morals and moral fiber, what factors do you think can change in terms of integrity and principles? I mean, how feasibly possible is it for us to retrace ourselves and rebuild our federal character? Do you think that
as a country,
do you think that it also depends on the kind of leaders that we have had?
Yes, because if you look historically, there's a direct relationship with good values and economic prosperity. In the 60s, where we didn't have much money, we didn't have much oil, but you had Awolowo in the western region, Ahmadu Bello in the north, and you had Zik in the east, and you found those regions moved reasonably successfully, and there were people who were driven by purpose to help their people. Awolowo in particular was spectacular with free education, with the television which he brought, with the idea of the cocoa boards, and you could see that they were driven entirely by purpose, and you saw the result. So I think a lot really depends on the personality. And let's even leave politics. Look at the businessmen, men I call the founders of Nigerian capitalism, Odumegwu Ojukwu's father, Odutola, Henry Fajemiroku, Hal Hassan Dantata, Ekili Dichukwu. These were men who were like their equivalent in America, or Vanderbilt, Morgan, and Ford, who started capitalism, very good ethics, they were role models, they're very inspiring, and you could see that the country and younger people looked up to them. International investors invested into their business. Ekele Ojukwu had Leventis coming into his business because of the standard and the ethic by which he employed. So that you have the role models and the leaders as very critical examples. The problem we've had in Nigeria is we've not had very inspiring leadership. Countries that have succeeded, like Singapore with Lee Kuan Yew, what Kagame is doing in Rwanda, even though a bit controversially with his human rights. You look at Botswana, you look at what Kama did with diamonds, he could have kept it to his family. And then they do a succession of leadership from Kama, he gave it to Masire to Mugabe back to Kama, Maga to Masisi. Consistently, the succession. We have, when even we get the leadership right, the succession of steps must not stumble. You look at China, you had the vision of Mao, but he was socialistic, so he didn't understand how to implement it as well. Then Deng came with the market economy and took China to a different level. Then they gave it to Li Zeping, who translated it into a different level. Succession of clarity of leaders inspire a change in any country. And if you don't do that, no matter what we preach, there will never be any difference. Awolowo had that potential Unfortunately, he was never president of Nigeria, whether or not you liked him, but you saw it in the Western region, and which is why the world applauded, even in Westminster, that he ran a government that could be a government anywhere. And one of the advantages that come from that is that you go out and choose the best, whether or not you like them. Whether you're my friend or not, you are the best person for this job. You create the best.
But that
defense.
doesn't apply here in Nigeria. You're not given the position because you're the best. And that's part of the reason why we are digressing as opposed to growing. Because if you get, there are Nigerians who are well fit for roles. They are well equipped. They are educated enough. They have the integrity. They have the morals. They have the moral fiber. They have the principles. But can you honestly say that they will be allowed a free rein to do what they know best without interference from the powers that be?
There's a challenge for meritocracy, but you had, under Obasanjo, you had the Minister of Finance, who was very, very remarkable. We brought in Soludo, who also did his best. We had stability. So we've seen evidence of individuals who have come in as very, very good ministers. But I agree with you. The difficulty we have is we have a restriction of the federal character principle, which is a political goal because of the diversity of the country, and I quite understand that. But the tragedy we have is that even within the scope of the federal character, we don't go for the best, because there's enough of the best in the whole of Nigeria. But we don't go for the best because of affiliations. But the real point here is that if we don't change that culture, individuals will continue to be rich in terms of a small section of society. But you will never translate this country to a different level if the inspired leadership does not occur to translate this. And really, that really is the bottom line.
Anyway, let's bring Eyamba in. Eyamba, we haven't forgotten you. Where are you? Can we see Eyamba, please? Eyamba. So, Eyamba, degradation of moral values amongst the younger generation is an emerging issue. What are the factors affecting this degradation, and what can be done to fight against it? Why are we seeing so many individuals in our culture fail to stay true to their values? So many leaders, why have so many leaders failed us morally and ethically? Okay, Demola, let's come back to you, because I think we've lost Eyamba at some stage. You know, you were talking about, I was just asking Eyamba about moral values. Another thing that also, I think, has affected this good name, having a good name, is that there are people who, with good names, who have entered politics and have left there tainted. You know, I don't want to necessarily call certain names, but there are certain names that, you know, they were like the paragon of virtues at the time that they were alive. And they entered into the foray of politics, and they left there beaten and hurt. Isn't that now discouraging for such like people to want to veer into a terrain that is full of banana peels and landmines?
Well, yes, to some extent, you see, but you can't give up, really. I mean, the way I see the country is, once the best people, if they have the opportunity to serve, and you are discouraged because you fear your name will be tainted, then the country will not progress. It's a price you have to pay to take the risk. Because you see, what we have to look at is that there are changes going on that have never occurred. End SARS. When you look back at the history of Nigeria, when things straighten up, End SARS is one of those moments. And the obedient movement, whether or not you agree with what the philosophy, the political colorations are, but fundamentally it was a plea for good governance. People desperately seeking good governance, so profoundly denied. Those are the beginnings. People came onto the streets. More people voted. There was a huge movement. Lagos State was at risk of changing its government. Now, those are little beginnings. They may not have succeeded, but they were protesting against bad governance. If you look at even the determination of Nigerian politics, you had a transfer of power from one president to another peacefully. You had the third term resisted. You had Jonathan's vice presidency converted to a presidency when it was going to be obstructed. You have results of an election, even though controversial, was abided by after the Supreme Court declared. These are incremental moments in a direction of change. So if you fold your arms and take the fatalistic view that, oh, Nigeria cannot change and therefore would never make any progress, then you will never make any progress. But you can see there are moments that are moving. By the next election, more people may be mobilized.
Hopefully so. Hopefully
they
so.
would.
But we are going on the break soon, and then we'll be right
you.
back to continue with our conversation. So see you right back soon in Perspectives. Hello, Eyamba. Sorry that we missed you. I mean, we had a bit of a problem initially. My question was, that the degradation of moral values amongst the younger generation is an emerging issue. What are the factors causing this degradation, and what can be done to fight against it? Why are we seeing so many individuals in our culture fail to stay true to their values? We are seeing so many leaders fall morally and ethically. How do we begin to address these pertinent issues? Can you hear me, Eyamba?
Okay. Sorry about... Yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. So in terms of moral degradation, it didn't start today. In terms of our culture changing over the years, in terms of our children, in terms of us, this generation, doing things differently from what our parents did, it's been over the years. If you look historically at our culture, we were based on fishermen, jewelry makers, farmers. It was a simplistic life prior to westernization, prior to industrialization, prior to modernization. And all these various things have influenced us. The one thing we look at is, as children are brought up, it is the home that starts our moral foundation, the family. And then we look at social groupings as to what happens in social groupings. If we look at the home, with what is happening, more and more parents are working longer and longer hours and are not there for their children. They're not at home for their children. Okay, the kids now are forced to play and find other groupings that help sort out their problems. You have football in the evening, you go to the motor park, you have different groupings, and then you have influences amongst those groupings. What happens when there's no food on the table, okay? And the parents just are not there and cannot be there to let the children know what is right or wrong. What happens when you then move on to schools? The next step, and you have teachers who are not having earnings that match the cost of living. And then they start encouraging things that happen in schools and teaching and setting examples to these children, okay, which they now adopt. You find a situation where I met a guy who told me, he said, I was very brainy, I had no shoes, but my teacher called me into another room during the exam and gave me a piece of paper to write on. And I was writing, and I was like, but I'm answering a question, sir, why? And the teacher now gave him another question to answer. At the end of the day, the teacher gave him 500 naira. 500 naira was given so that the boy could continue giving and providing this service of answering questions and exam papers on behalf of other people.
Wow.
This is what he was brought and taught by his teacher. So you have all these things happening. People, circumstances change, and people start doing things they shouldn't do because they are desperate.
Desperation. Thank you, Eyamba.
I'm not sure if I can be heard because
we can hear you.
Cut off here.
We can hear you.
But basically, when that happens, and you find a situation where the teachers, the parents are forced to do other things that they don't really want to do, but because they have no choice but to try and earn livings, they now abandon the kids to either the public to bring them up, social media to bring them up, or friends or the nannies at home to bring them up. And the values they pick up are values they have picked up from other various sources. And these are now become their value systems, okay? And they now come up as adults, okay? And as adults, you then decide, what are values? Values are the things that motivate you to achieve what you want to be.
Okay. Right.
Values are what motivate you to become what you want to be.
Absolutely.
And at this point in time, we find that...
Can you hear us?
No, don't worry, Eyamba.
Can you hear us?
I'm sorry, we're having communication problems here.
Can you hear me?
At this point in time, you find... I can hear you
back
now.
to the studio. Okay.
So with the values that you are now... Okay, now you find that with the values that they have now learned because of circumstances, you have adults who now think being successful, money is what they should be achieving, and not because that is what they feel will help solve their issues.
Absolutely.
And then you then have, on the other hand, people who feel that education is important, that this will help you, that if you have the best education, this is where you will go.
Thank you so much.
Moral degradation now happens when you then have politicians coming in who feel this is the only way, money is the only way for me to be successful.
Absolutely. One more
I have
question
been
before...
brought up in a disadvantaged situation. I don't have the money. Okay, what am I going to do? What values am I going to compromise to get to where I think I should get to?
Thank you, Eyamba.
Is this now a different value, or is it my value, the way I perceive and consider what I need to do, which becomes my norm? Because if in my social groupings when I was young, if we had to go to just run along and pick a tangerine and run away because we had to survive.
Thank you so much. Hungry. We're going to bring you back to the studio. SAN,
Yes.
there have been certain communications going around that saying Nigerians should speak positively about our country. After all, this is the only country we have, and government needs that positive message out there in order to attract foreign direct investments. What do you think must be done prior to Nigerians being able to speak positively, despite the high poverty, high inflation, and all the strangling economic conditions Nigerians are going through?
Well, I mean, I'm one of the view, and I've announced it in my own professional circle. You cannot talk down your country, you cannot talk down your currency, neither can you talk down your profession. No outsider can sort out a man's problem. It's a pure domestic matter. A family is having a problem, and then you report to the outsider. They're going to make a mockery of you. So really, it's a problem which we need to address, but there's no value in making so much noise about our problem to outsiders. Now, we know what the fundamentals are. The problem we have is we have not developed a system of accountability. Punishment is not there. We saw what happened with a leader who went to England and he got convicted. We saw in the PID case how an English judge was who indicted two of the finest lawyers in England and has set them for an inquiry and vindicated our own lawyers. But pure objectivity, he looked at the facts and he evaluated it. So what we need to do is to start having that system of accountability. People are punished for whatever they've done, would act as a deterrent. Education has suffered vastly. She mentioned that fact about what's happening in schools. Both of us went to Jesuit schools. We actually met in St. Mary's. We're in the same primary school, same class, by coincidence with the Eyamba. But I found what education does is that it gives you clarity, it gives you moral sense, good education, it gives you moderation, it gives you social justice. And the kind of education we had in those days before the government took over the schools. If you looked at St. Gregory's College, St. Finbarr's with sports, in Greg's we had a Father Cornell who taught us, we had Jesus Christ Superstar, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Code, liberal arts. We had diversity, we mixed with different religions, we grew and we understood our moderation and restriction. And when I meet my own contemporaries, we all still have that same moral sense. So, but education is so poor at the moment, so you need to invest a lot of money, even if it's disproportionately, into education. Why do our students who jackpot, so to speak, or the young ones, go abroad and they change in their behavior? It's the same person in Nigeria, but they go abroad because there's accountability. There's a fear of repatriation, a fear of conviction, a fear of the loss of job. So what we need to do, and this is the opportunity for the new leadership, it's early days, but there is a chance in the history of time to make a significant difference by ensuring not only are you choosing people around you who have the ability, investing heavily in education and making accountability of people. You may not be able to do so many immediately, but if you take a few examples and show that you mean business, then deterrence starts. Those are the things that encourage slowly change and encourage role models. You find people doing well in school, are they celebrated? What are the scholarships given to them? Let them be celebrated. Awards should not be ones of patronage. It should be people who we all agree have done things very well. So those are the values which you need to bring back and
But
extol.
you're not saying that Nigerians should hide their truth for patriotism?
No, you must never hide the truth, but you must be careful. It's wisdom. You can't go outside abusing your own country. I mean, you need to deal with it. People know what's going on. But we don't help ourselves if we go outside. Nothing helps, but we need to deal with it internally. It's an internal problem.
Speaking of dealing with it, remember we were discussing earlier on, and I was saying to you that I don't feel that there's this money is everything mantra that Nigerians believe in.
Yes.
And the fact that the people in power or people of high position, some of them with even supposedly good names, have stolen trillions and trillions and trillions of naira. And at the end of the day, you know, it seems like they just get a tap on the wrist.
Yes.
You know, and this attitude in the way they are treated transcends to people who are looking up to them, like the youth.
Yes.
You know, if you hear somebody, let's not call names, a particular person stole 40 billion or 120 billion or 500 billion, and then they return maybe half of that to the government. There's still a remaining 100 billion to live with.
Yes.
So tell me how a youth who is looking and reading things like this are not seeing that any proper punishment is being given to these culprits. Tell me how they will not be encouraged to want to do the same thing and say, if I can steal 300 billion and I return 100 billion, I still have 200 billion to live off. Because you were saying, I mean, look at Murdoch in America, and there's so many other people like that who supposedly build a reputation.
Yes.
Do you understand? And they're in the docks.
Yes.
So why are they not given the kind of punishment supposed to be meted out at them for the atrocities that they're committing?
Sure, that is a change of culture that has to occur. And this is what I'm saying about leadership. Leadership has to make that decision. And going forward, the electorate also needs to be very vigilant in terms of who you elect into power if you're not happy that a leader is able to translate those things. That's why I say there's a growing awareness and a growing movement and a growing desire to see these things done properly. There's an opportunity at the moment because we have an incumbent. It's early days yet, but let us see how far he will go, because those things can change and they have to change if you're going to have this society transform in the manner in which you want it to transform, because it's a universal standard in all societies that have transformed, is the fact that you have the leadership making that moral decision to shape the country. I mean, Thomas Carlyle says the history of the world is really a biography of great leaders, what they did. If Lincoln didn't do what he did, what happened to slavery may have been a different impression. And these are the examples. If you didn't have a Roosevelt during the Second World War and the Great Depression, perhaps the way in which the World War would have ended up may have been different, or a Churchill. So it all ends up with that inspired leadership. You almost inhabited the vision. And we haven't had that over the years, which is the problem Nigeria's had. We've had one or two relatively good leaders compared to the other. But we need to have that level of inspiration unfolded, because we follow things. When we had the military regime of Muritala, everybody was afraid. They were whipped into discipline. When we even had the combination of Buhari and Ide, we were whipped into a level of discipline. Even when Abacha was ruling negatively, we're under fear. So we're a very sensitive country to leadership. When leadership takes a very strong level, everybody falls into place.
But I thought you said something about the legal structure is not strong enough. That some of these culprits are better to just collect money back from them.
So you have a situation where my personal view is you are not able to take on everyone. So you take a few of high profile.
Well, why not? Why aren't you able to take on everyone?
Let me finish. You take a few high profile and you show that you are serious, and you take it down the line to the end so that people realize that you have the political will and you're serious. Because of practicability, within a short period, you can't take so many people because it's very complicated, the trial. You have very good defense lawyers. They have resources. So you have prosecuting authorities who have less, and they probably have to go to private lawyers. So there's bound to be some level of difficulty in getting effective results quickly. But what makes people take things seriously, when they see ABC, who are so high profiled, have been indicted properly, then people tend to be clear-minded.
Have you seen enough of those?
No, I won't say we have over the years. And these are the things for change. These are the traumas which we have. But these are the ways if we are going to make the country forward. Because again, in countries like Singapore and all those countries have driven things differently, they made that decision of accountability and punishment, and that deters you.
Absolutely.
So why haven't we seen enough of those then?
I think because of the nature of the values of the society and the nature of the political negotiations and the nature of the begging culture behind the scene. There's so many factors. But again, it's getting to the point where you are not translating your country if you continue like that. And that is the only way in which it's going to change.
Okay. Where's Eyamba? Let's get back to Eyamba, in case she thinks we've forgotten her. Okay.
Communication problems.
I know, but we haven't forgotten
Communication
you.
problems.
Now, what would you consider
Okay,
a successful life in today's Nigeria? Living in alignment with your values.
A successful what?
Okay, sorry, can I go back to that then? Okay. I said, what do you think the average Nigerian of today would consider a successful life? Living in alignment with your values and doing what you truly believe in, but which is not enough to sustain you and your family. Or earning loads of cash, doing work that leaves you feeling conflicted, but puts food on your table with plenty extra. What do you think the average Nigerian will toe? What line do you think the average Nigerian will toe, and why?
I think our lives and our reason for existence, it's to be happy. It's to be happy. Okay? So how you value success and how you earn a living are two different things. If you're working and your earnings are not covering your cost of living, automatically there's a gap. And that gap means you have to fill it up somehow, either finding other things to do, okay, legally or illegally. Because if you can't eat and your essence of the reason why you're being is no longer there, then you have to then think about, why you're existing. If the thing you need to be alive is not available, then you now look and see, is there any point in living? So we have to wonder why suicide rates are up at the moment in Nigeria. We have to look at all these things. And government, as we see it, has to look and see, are the earnings of our people in alignment with the cost of living in terms of what they need to do? We have to look and see that this issue where the rich are earning so much and buy a bagger that could pay the school fees of somebody working for them for 40 years, that why don't you increase the the salary earned by your personnel so that that person can live properly? Why do you think this fixation of 40,000 or 50,000 or 80,000? Okay, if you have the ability to do so, why can't you do something to change? Why aren't we there for our fellow human beings, okay, and assess and look? So government really has to look, people at home have to look, we have to look and see this poverty mentality we have, where you go to parties, Owambes, and women draped in diamonds are still struggling for gift items. I mean, it's ridiculous. Why are we even giving out those gift items in the first place? Can't that money have been given to charity? Couldn't you have contributions to give these funds to charity? So in terms of assessing and looking at what earnings are, that has to be looked at in reality. I mean, what is the cost of a car versus what you pay a factory worker, what you pay a secretary, what you pay the cook? There is a problem there.
Very well
that has to
spoken.
be assessed, reassessed.
Absolutely.
Okay. And these are the issues we have to look at and try and realize it's not just you as a person. Thank you.
You said it very well spoken. Many people who preach good reputation over money haven't experienced the intense poverty and slavery that occurs across Nigeria today. Would you say there are any acceptable reasons to choose money over reputation? Extreme hardship, life and death situations, emergencies?
Oh, of course, I would say so. Because I'll give this example. The example I want to give is a group of rugby players that were in a plane crash in the snow mountains. And they were there for 72 days. And coincidentally, these rugby players were from a Christian rugby club from Uruguay. And to survive, guess what they did? They ate their family members and friends. They ate them. It was so horrific. But guess what? Every year they're celebrated for having survived. That in spite of those circumstances, they did what they should not do and went against what they should to try and survive. So you will find that when people are pushed to the wall, they will do things they would not normally even consider doing. They would do things they would not consider doing under normal circumstances. So we have to ensure that as a society, we are continuously assessing what is happening. We're continuously evaluating if needs are being met and how best these needs should be met and what we should do to meet these needs. Because certain people do things that they would not normally do, And when there's fear that, oh, I'm about to lose it all, they will go to the extreme and do things they shouldn't do.
Okay, thank you, Eyamba.
So well
let's get
said.
back
Having a
to
communication
Demola.
problem again.
Let's get back to
we're done.
Demola
Yeah.
here.
I just wanted to
Absolutely.
add
to what
to
you said.
that. There's a saying by the former Congolese leader, a minimum of comfort is necessary
Yeah.
for the practice of virtue. There's a certain level of poverty that you would not expect a man to act otherwise. I remember the first line of a book I read in literature, The Great Gatsby. It says, before I criticize anybody else in life, always remember not everybody has had the advantages I've had. I don't know what I would do if my economic circumstances became radically bad, or your circumstances, because survival becomes there. So the real issue is that the economic planning and proper economic policies that gives a person dignity. Someone defined just a very good point about what is important in life. It's called the unity of the blessings of existence, your faith, love and affection of family, friendship and warm relationships, your dignity. Now, sufficient money, not a lot of money, sufficient money to protect your dignity. That's what's critical. And most people, when they have that, unless they're very greedy, they tend to thrive. That was the Nigeria of the 60s, the 70s, and even today. But what you're having today is that there's just no level of dignity that gives a person the ability to survive. And when you're thrown into those circumstances, then unpredictable and unusual results will occur.
Okay, now that
So
you speak about dignity, you know, there's some people, I mean, earlier on you did say that we cannot throw the baby away with the bathwater, no matter
Yes.
how bad things have become.
Yes.
We should always try and see how we can, you know, have our own
Absolutely.
positive impact.
Yes.
But some people have taken this approach. Some good names in the past have veered into the world of politics, and they were left tainted with one scandal or the other, inadvertently attached to them through no fault of theirs.
Yes.
You know, so some have even lost their lives in the process. They've been killed. You know, so how do you now begin to encourage dignified people with integrity and strong moral fiber? How do you now begin to encourage them more to get into politics? Because at the end of the day, it cascades from leadership. Every problem that we have in society today, every sector in society today is affected because from the top, it trickles all the way down. So what hope would you give to young, aspiring people who want to enter into this foray of politics and not be discouraged? What would you say to them?
We're running out of time, so please make it your
Yes,
final
I'll
words.
tell them we have no choice, because the alternative is to give up. You've got to take the risk. If you don't take it, then what's going to happen? There are risks in everything in life. You've got to measure the risk. Nobody knows the future. But if you're clear-minded in your purpose and you have ability, you've got to take the risk, because it is the only way the country is going to be salvaged. If at the end of the day, you have meritorious people who have clarity and are able to alter the difference
Well said.
in Nigerian
Absolutely.
society.
Thank
Very
you
well
so
said.
much, Demola, Akinrele,
Thank you.
And Eyamba.
and Eyamba, Dafinone. Eyamba, are you there? Let's say a last bye to you. Thank you so much for being with us
So
today
much.
on Perspectives, and I hope you had a good time chatting with us. Demola, thank you so much.
Thank
As
you very
usual,
much.
Mr. Orator and a half.
Thank you.
You did well today. Thank you so much
Thank
again for honoring my
Thank
invitation.
you.
My regards to my old school mate.
Exactly.
A real pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much. Anyway, consider historical figures and heroes past. Those who made profound impacts, not only due to their remarkable leadership, but also because their names became synonymous with unwavering principles. Their legacies live on, inspiring generations to come. Though their journeys were marked by struggles, their names remain untarnished, serving as beacons of hope and change. There's an anonymous quote that says, "Live in such a way that if someone, anybody, spoke badly of you, no one would believe it." Now that is the value of a good name. And as I always say, remember, life is a learning curve. That's all we have time for you today. You've been watching Perspectives here on Arise News with me, R.Osime. See you next week.
Thank you. A good name is more powerful than gold when combined with innovative competence. It precedes opportunities at the right time. When you walk into a room, the gazes and smiles should be welcoming. When you walk out of a room, the chatter should be impressive. And the rooms that you never entered but your name was mentioned should vibrate with unity, peace, and trust. The key to a better world today is pushing our individual and collective dreams as progressively, ethically, and as humanely as possible. Our world needs a much stronger dosage of healthy love, care, and genuine compassion. My name is Olatorera Majekodunmi-Oniru, and I love all things Greater Nigeria. Thank you for watching Perspectives. Have a great weekend. See you all very soon. Goodbye.